welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Around the Draft here. I got my boys Felix and Jake with us. And this is a big episode because we've talked a lot about the best spots in the draft. We're almost at the end of all the positions we're going to talk about. Next week, we are wrapping things up with safeties and specifically slot defender types. So definitely look forward to that next week. But we get the corners this week, kind of the premium position on defense, in my opinion. The edge group is pretty good. The top of the defensive tackle group is pretty good. But for me, this is the group that kind of has the most potential starters, I think, that you can get in the first couple rounds. And I really like the depth, especially in that kind of like middle tier after the first couple guys, at least for me. We'll see how you guys feel about the guys. But you guys excited to do corners?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is one of the deepest positions in the draft, I think.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of day two guys that get some playing time probably year one. Some I like more than others, but in general, I think it's a pretty strong class. Now, again, at least for me, now you guys might have your list a little bit different. I talked to Jake about this before the show, Felix, but we're not going to focus on a lot of guys that at least I'm not going to on guys who I think are going to profile in the slot. So there might be guys who technically would be in my top 10 players at corner, but I have them saved for the slot list for next week. So, some guys also on this list will be guys who maybe could play in the slot, or maybe some people think might be best in the slot. But for me, they're guys who would be or could be boundary corners. So just as a heads up, so if there's a name that I don't talk about or that none of us talk about, probably just because they're going to be on the list next week for the slot defender guys. So outside of that, just as a preface, so no, I don't want any specifically Michigan fans to hate me or anything like that. We'll talk about that corner for next week, at least for me. But yeah, we'll jump into it. So we're going to start from 10, obviously. I'll kick things off. So normally I make you guys kick things off. I'll start with my number 10 guy here. I have Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon as my number 10 corner. Nice. And I wanted to like him a little bit more because I usually love the bigger, powerful, like press man outside guys. I just don't know if he can do anything else besides press at a high level at the next level. Like I just don't see the foot speed. I don't see the quickness, the ability to kind of get in and out of his stance well to kind of run down the field with guys if he doesn't get a good press on them. And unfortunately, like if you're that type of guy, you're very hit or miss in the next level. Like some receivers are just going to be able to beat you in your press, and you're not going to be able to press them at the line. You're not going to be able to get your hands on him. And when he doesn't get his hands on guys, they run away from him. That's just kind of the reality of his situation, right? And again, it's not something I'm not shocked by for a guy with his profile. I think like upwards of 6'2"-ish, I think is what he came in at, over 200 pounds. Like this is a big physical corner, and he has a lot of the same issues that big physical corners tend to have, right? But I do think in the right scheme, if you get him in a situation where he can mostly be a press man guy, he can come up, he can really hit guys in the mouth, kick things off at the start, disrupt timing offenses, especially if you're going up against a team that really needs that quick timing-based stuff to work. He'd be a great fit to kind of disrupt some of that. But you just have to protect him, I think, with like, especially safeties over the top of deeper routes and things like that. That's going to be important for him. But I do think he has a role at the next level, though. So he's my number 10 guy. Do you guys have him anywhere in your top 10?
Yeah, I also had him at 10.
Okay, so you had him at 10 too. Okay.
Pretty much for the same exact thing that you said. He's very good in press off the ball. Yes. He's got great length. I think he's definitely going to be best used. The closer he is to the boundary, I think the better he's going to be.
Yes.
Because he doesn't have to worry about having to change direction fast. He could use his ball skills, which are great. He's a big guy. So he's got great ball skills. I think he's definitely best used closer to the boundary. But yeah, you talked a lot about some of his limitations, and I think that's why he's at the bottom of my list. But again, it's a pretty deep class. So even though he's at 10, I still do think he can be a pretty solid corner in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, folks? You have him anywhere in your top 10?
Yeah, he's actually number 10 for me too.
Hey, so we agree on number 10 at least. I don't know if it'll happen again, but we got we can all move to number 9. We know exactly who we're moving to next. Okay. Felix, anything you want to add with him then?
No, I think you guys covered the bases for the most part. I just one thing I'll note is for a guy who's tall, pretty long, I did like the fact that it seemed like he could move like pretty well. And I like his physicality for the position. It seems like he's like a safety with slightly more athleticism that could play outside a little bit. You know what I mean? Like
right.
It seems a little bit like he plays with that fiery mentality that I really like from a guy that's going to come up and play press. But outside of that, I think, like he's pretty athletic for the position. That's why I have him at 10. I feel like if he was like a really good athlete, I'd have him higher. But
Right.
I think he's a little, limited in that. But the feistiness and the anticipation, the football IQ, I think that really balances things out. So I have him at 10.
Right, that's kind of the thing for me is like it's not even that he's a bad athlete, it's more so that he doesn't have, I think, the speed to recover when he loses, right? And his frame helps him a little bit because I do think there's times where he can still kind of affect the ball, even if he's definitely beat a little bit, which will help him for especially when he's facing receivers he just simply can't run with if he doesn't get a good press rep. But I also think he does have that thing that big corners have where it's just like sometimes they just labor a little bit, right? And it's going to happen. It's nothing that he really like. It's not unexpected with him. It's not like a true knock. It's more of just a reality of playing the position at his size. He's not going to be as fluid as probably the rest of these guys we're going to talk about realistically, right? So that's what it comes down to with him. But again, still a good player. Kind of scheme specific in my opinion, just a press man, heavy scheme.
Yeah.
But if he plays there, I think he'll be at least a good player. So, but number 9, let's start with Felix then here. Who do you have at number 9?
So number 9, I have Ennis Rakestraw.
Ennis Rakestraw. Me too, actually.
Felix,
wow. So we both have him at 9. He was the guy that I thought I was going to be lower on than you guys in general. So it's interesting you have him at 9 too. Jake, real quick, just so we know, where do you have him at?
I have him at 7.
7. Okay, so we'll do. Let me make sure I note that. So you have him at 7. So Felix, I'll let you obviously start off with this since you started with him. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I thought, considering I didn't get to watch him until after the combine, so a lot of my opinion was post combine and seeing how he worked out. Right. And I thought, okay, 183 is pretty light. Movement skills 40 and a 10. Good broad jump. He didn't do any of the agility drills.
Right.
So I was like, every time a guy doesn't do agility drills, I'm like,
it does. Okay. It does make you wonder a little bit sometimes. So
yeah. But I will say the one thing that really comes off tape for me when I watch him is just toughness. I mean, considering his frame, his size, he's physical. He really plays feisty, and that's something that I love. Is like, are you a feisty guy? Because to me, I feel like you can coach back the you could coach back like the handsiness, but you can't really coach up like the attitude, like to let me get in your face like type of player. Right. And he has that attitude, that sort of approach where it's like, I'm going to disrupt you as much as possible and I'm going to be in your face. And I think he's very good in terms of like, even though he's not the most like elite athlete, I think he understands where he stands and where he places himself in front of a receiver and then tries to anticipate. But I think sometimes he can get a little overhandsy. I think sometimes he doesn't really anticipate, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, anytime it's something that's beyond like 20 yards, it seems like he's just late. Like after it's 20 yards and he's turning his hips and he's running with the corner, he loses sort of perception of the play. And what I mean by that is like, if the ball gets thrown in his direction, it seems like he just does not anticipate it, like, at all.
Yeah, I think he lacks awareness in the deeper parts of the field. Like when he's forced to cover in those areas where he isn't reacting, coming forward, I think. And I think that's where it comes with the physicality aspect and the toughness. Felix is like, he's a player that when he's coming downhill and when he's attacking the football, he shows those traits that you look for in the corner to be able to do that. When he is in his back pedal, when he's forced to kind of go backwards and try to make plays in that way, he loses a little bit of that just tenacity because he can't come forward and then see it and attack it. So his ball skills aren't, I don't know if they're necessarily bad, like you said, but I think that they start to fall off as you get deeper down the field. Like when it's not in front of him, he struggles with it a little bit.
Yeah. And then I think that's a good way of putting it, where it's like, it's not necessarily the ball skills, but it seems like when he's more of a see ball, get ball, like literally kind of guy. Like, his back like he's oblivious. He has no idea. And I think
sounds like someone else I know, like Daniel Jones, oblivious. There it is. All right, I got it. I don't have to do it.
I knew it.
Felix, it was so hard to work Daniel Jones with the last one when you weren't here.
Yeah, I did it though. I forget we did it, I think, but I forget what I said.
Yeah, I know.
But,
like
no, but God,
so we went one episode without Daniel Jones. So that's impressive. 90%. 90% is better than his completion percentage. Okay, I'm gonna.
Well, so it's better than everybody's completion percentage. But
I mean, yeah,
anyway.
but it's better than his on
especially his
like screens or something.
Yes,
but yeah,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's I think literally a see ball get ball kind of guy. He lacks that sort of awareness, like you said. But I think like I have him at 9, and I think some of it is measurables, some of it is that like concept of the awareness, which I think some of it you can coach up to an extent where it's like understand the situation, down and distance. This is where you need to turn your head. This is like the timing of like how you handle things. So I think some of it is coachable, but I think with the athleticism and the anticipation and the physicality, the way he can disrupt a route, I think that helps him. So to me, it's like, all right, if he doesn't see the ball, at least he's going to be in the receiver's face. You know, he's not just getting beat outright. So that's why I have him at 9 in my top 10. And I think he's a guy who, even though he's 5'10", 5'11", I think is what he measured out at. So, you know, pretty good size, but not like, but not like elite size. Like, I think he could still play perimeter ball.
Right. Again, I kind of fully agree on all that. I think ultimately he's a guy that I just worry though too with his size. Can he play like he does in college and not get banged up and be able to get away with it as much, right? And that's the worry with guys like this, because everybody loves the 5'11" or under 180 pound scrappy corners. We all love them because they play hard as shit. They're fun to watch. Sometimes they have some explosiveness, and I think he has a little bit of that. But at the same time, like, is that going to work against full-size NFL receivers? Is it going to work against guys who are going to be more willing to attack him and not just be attacked by him, right?
Yes.
That's kind of the concern. And I'm going to bet that he's at least going to be a good player, so it's why he's in my top 10. But this is a profile that just doesn't always work, right? Like, it just doesn't always work out. And when it works, you get like a guy that's Mike Hilton type. And I know he's a slot player, but like that guy that, yeah, he doesn't have the best athleticism. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but people know he's coming when he hits them. Like that physicality stacks up at the next level. With Rakestraw, it's like, can his body hold up? He's had some injury stuff. Now I know the ACL is like, it's an ACL. Everybody tears their ACL, it feels like. I'm surprised I haven't torn my ACL since the show started. But the point is like, with that type of play style, you do run that risk more, right? You put your body on the line much more often than some of the other guys we're going to talk about. And it does help if you're a 6 foot, 195 pound corner doing that instead of a 5'11", 180 pound one, just kind of the reality of the situation. So, but I know you're a little bit higher than I'm, Jake. So what other things you want to add to his game here?
I think you guys pretty much covered basically everything about him. For me, I think he's a little higher just because he has like the building blocks that I think you want from a young cornerback. I think he's got great instincts. He's great in press coverage, as we talked about. He's smart. He's got good length. He can change direction pretty quickly. So all of those things, I think, are very good foundational things that he can already do that we can build off of. He does have some awareness issues. I noticed for me, especially in zone, he tends to drift out of his area a lot. So, but you guys were kind of talking about it earlier. I think some of these things can be coached up, which is why I'm a little bit higher on him, but we all kind of have him in the same area.
It's not like we're super far away from you or anything, but
I think his weaknesses, I think, can be coached up a bit, and he does so many things well that I think are really valuable traits for a corner. That if this was not as deep of a class, he'd be higher in other years, I think. But with how deep this class is, he's a 7 for me.
Right. Again, I get that because like he's the type of guy that a lot of people just gravitate towards, right? Because it just feels like, man, if this guy can play like this at the next level, he's gonna be freaking awesome. And it's true. Like, if he can keep playing like this, that's probably how he's going to play. But it is just a question mark, I think, ultimately. So, but let's jump to your number 9. Oh, so I got to
I just wanted to add a note because I feel like I agreed with everything the both of you said. about Rakestraw, but I think he's one of my guys in my top 10 that I could see eventually, because he's such a physical player against the run and he's so tenacious, especially at the catch point. I could see him sliding into nickel, even though I have him in my top 10 here, and we're going to separate nickel out. He's one of the guys, like, of all my guys in the top 10, like, I would probably have him top 5 as a dude who could slide in nickel and have a decent career, because I just think how physical he is at the catch point. Even if he's lined up on a taller slot, he's going to play their hands well, play the ball well, you know. And that's one thing I will say is, like, he reacts pretty well in terms of, like, if his head's not turned and the ball hits the receiver's hands, his immediate thing is like, oh, I'm gonna rake that arm, and I'm gonna, which is funny, his last name is Rakestraw, but I'm gonna rake that arm and I'm gonna, like, disrupt the catch point. But that's something you really need in, nickel when you're playing inside on maybe slot guys that are bigger than you, more shifty, or even for some reason there's a mismatch and there's a tight end on you. Like, I could see him sliding in and being better than what we are seeing on tape when we anticipate in a perimeter corner. But I just wanted to put it out there because I didn't put him in my nickel rankings, but, like, if he shifted to nickel, like, his second year, third year in the NFL, I'd be like, oh yeah, I can kind of see that, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with that, because, again, he has the physical profile of a slot corner, right? It's just that he hasn't really done that a lot. And there's guys, though, that happens, right? Like, you come as an outside corner in the league, you find out you can't really do it, or the team doesn't think you can do it, so they move you inside, and then you have a lot of success. So I can see that with him. I think it probably, like I said, just from a play style perspective especially, would fit him more. But I do think the team is going to draft him to try to play outside corner, and then if he can, maybe he does kind of slot inside there then. But who would be your number 9 then, Jake, since he was our number 9?
Okay. So my number 9 is Mike Sainristil.
Okay, right.
I won't go into him too much because I'm pretty sure we're going to cover him next week, because I definitely do think that he can be a slot corner. But I do believe that he has some traits that could have him be valuable on the outside, so I did include him in my list.
Right.
He is undersized. He's not as strong because he's undersized, and I don't think he's that great in man coverage. So all of those things make me completely understand why others would have him at slot corner. However, there's a couple things I noticed that I do think could be valuable on the outside. I think he has very, very good ball skills.
Yes,
and I think
some of the better ones in the class, actually.
Yeah, and which is, he kind of needs to have it at 5. I think he's 5'9" or 5'10".
I think he's 5, just under 5'10", roughly. I think like 180-ish pounds, I think, something like that.
That sounds about right. But yeah, that height, you've got to have good ball skills. But he's relentless. He's given 100% effort every play. He's very good when the ball is in the air. I honestly think that's his best trait, is coming down with the ball when it's in the air. And he's smart. I think he's able to read route concepts pretty well. So I think all of those things are traits that can at times have him be valuable on the outside. But I do think just because of his frame, he's going to kind of fit better at first in the NFL as a slot corner. So yeah, he's one of those guys. I saw some things that I thought he could be valuable on the outside, so I put him in here. But I definitely understand if you guys don't see him as an outside corner.
Real quick, Felix, do you have him slated for the slot episode, or did you have him ranked in here too?
I have him slotted for the slot.
Okay, just want to make sure. So my real quick thing is, since we're talking about him as an outside corner, real quick here, is I do think if you're going to play him on the outside, he could potentially be like a Darius Williams type. If you guys are familiar with him, longtime Rams corner, then moved to the Jaguars, now back with the Rams, I think, actually now. That 5'9"-ish, but really, short air explosive type of guy who can make plays from off-man coverage and from zone, right, in that scheme. So I think that type of role he could potentially fill, but I think his ability as a slot corner is just too good to kind of try him outside. Like, if he were to some reason fail in the slot, I could definitely see a team like that, or that runs that type of system, to ask him to try to play outside and just make plays from that off coverage position. But I don't really have any doubts about him as a slot corner. So that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Jake. Like, I think like it's one of
I
those situations. Like, I feel like some people feel that way about somebody I'm assuming will be on this list for everybody from Iowa that we'll wait and talk about, where maybe his best position isn't the position he's going to be listed at, even if he's still a good player at that position, right? Where I think Sanders still is such a good slot player. I mean, he's got almost 1,000 snaps in 2 years, past 2 years in the slot. Like, ton of experience, ton of ball production. He's that type of guy that's like a weaponized slot that I think a lot of teams need and that a lot of great defenses need to have in order to be great. So I'm excited to talk about him more, but we'll do that later. And then Felix, I don't know if you wanted to add to that at all, or we can get kind of to our next guy here.
Oh no, we can hit the next guy. I feel
Gotcha.
like you guys really covered it. Yeah.
Cool. So we got all of our number 9's taken care of then. So number 8. So let's you start, Jake. Who's your number 8 guy?
My number 8 guy is TJ Tampa.
TJ Tampa. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. And then Fix, do you have him in your list anywhere?
I have him at 11, actually.
Okay. Me too, actually. So
all right.
So we'll talk about him though. Jake, so you go ahead and start with him then.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. Just to start off, I do think he's gonna have to play in a zone scheme. Okay. And because of that, that's why he's lower. Right. I'm assuming that's part of the reason he's even lower for you guys.
A little bit for me, at least. I don't know about Felix, but a little bit for me.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I think the reason I had him in my top 10 is because of his ball skills. I think I found when I was watching these guys that that's something that just jumps out to me, because that was something I noted for any guy that I had higher than I think other people would have. That was always like one of the things.
But fair, honestly,
Yeah, but he's really, really, really good in zone coverage. He has great instincts and he reads what the offense is going to do pretty well. And he's got good length, which makes him productive there. But I'm not confident that he can play man-to-man coverage consistently in the NFL. And I think because of that, he's going to be a little bit limited in his playing time and what teams can do with him. But he's great in zone. Has good ball skills. He's a decent tackler. He's not the best, but he's willing to get in there every time. I never saw him take any plays off. Even when the ball's across the field, he's still going to it. So he's got a good motor and he's good in zone coverage. And I think that will get him snaps in the NFL. But part of the reason he's lower on my list is because I'm just very concerned about his man-to-man coverage.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think the issue with him is he's kind of the flip side of Kyrie Jackson, where it's like, okay, I don't know if Kyrie Jackson can move in space that well, and I don't know if he can make plays from off coverage very often in zone, but I know he can run up into a dude's face and knock him around. Like, I know he can do that and kind of play bump and run man coverage. And you'd think with the size profile that Tampa has, you'd think he'd be that type of guy, but he really isn't. And that's the thing that kind of makes him weird for me, is I feel like I'm lower on him than some people are, only because I just don't know if I've seen this type of player that often, where he's a big, what should be very physical, like corner that you think would be that type of outside man coverage guy. And he just really isn't. Like, he doesn't play a lot of press, and I would say it's a weird defense all the time. So like maybe that's part of it. Like they're just like, oh, we just need this guy to just play off and make plays, whatever, which is fine. But I do think there's more room for that physical press man guy that's this size than there is this zone type player at this size, right? Like, and he could end up being successful in the right defense. And I think the long speed concerns are mitigated a little bit because of how much zone he's probably going to play. So that helps him there. But I do just wonder, like, is when he converts to man coverage at times, because he's going to obviously have to at the next level, is he going to be able to run with guys? Like, is he going to be able to do that type of stuff? Because he just didn't really do a great job of that at the college level. So it's just hard to project.
Yeah.
Any thoughts there, Phil? Anything you wanted to add to him there?
Yeah, no, I think you really hit the nail on the head, Shane, in terms of like my thinking. I really wanted to like him more than I ended up liking him. Watched his combine performance, and I follow the combine for everybody, but like when I watched him, it's like the first time I ever really got to like key in on him. And I'd heard his name, and I started watching his tape, and when I see like his frame and his physical profile, you're just like, oh, I wish he could be like a really good fight, like just be feisty, like on it, man corner on the perimeter. Like, oh, he would be probably a early day 2 pick, just off the tape. But I I just agree. I agree with Jake. Like that's a big reason why he's lower for me. Is just like he's great in zone, but you just gotta. I mean, I think like he's a dude that I can see being drafted higher than I would pick him
to the right
because
team.
yeah, because it's a team that looks at him and is like, oh, we're gonna play zone heavy like so much, so like he's great for that. But I do think like he has the physical profile to maybe get coached up, you know. But like,
Right, that's something you have to consider. I do think though, like the long speed concerns are valid with him.
yeah,
So it does make you wonder, like maybe this is kind of just his best role, and it's just how valuable do you have that, right? Like how valuable is that to you? If it's
exactly.
me, a little less than Jake, but still, like I'd still take him at the end of day two, probably. Like they could take all these, like the guys we talked about are all like mid to late day two guys for me so far at this point. So like these are all kind of a grab bag of like, what do you want? Right? Like, what is it that you're looking for in your corner that you're hoping could be like either a corner two or, if you want to play them in the slot corner three. So, like, it's really preference with these guys a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's go to who do you have? Sorry, for our number 8, Felix.
So, number 8, I have Kalen Carson.
Kalen Carson. Okay. So, he's a guy that's not in my top 10. I don't know about you, Jake.
Oh, he's not in mine either.
Okay, so I want Felix then to have the floor then. What do you think about Kalen Carson here?
Yeah, so Kalen Carson I like because I think he has ideal frame because he measured out 6 feet, like 200, I think. So like
roughly right around there, yeah.
Yeah, just like the prototype frame. But what I like about him is I think he's ideal for perimeter corner. I think he could play both man, he could play zone. And I think the thing about it that sticks out to me is that he's very what's the word I'm looking for? Like he's an aggressive player. He's a willing tackler. But I think he has really good like anticipatory quickness, so it's like the physicality is there and the athleticism is there. But even when guys are trying to get that like wiggle on him and like, try to make that like hezzy move and, shutter him and make him question which direction they're going, he has this patience that I think is very difficult to teach. And it's something that it's like he can read this route, and you even see it on things like combo routes and rub routes where like his guy, he doesn't really get picked, off of those plays that often. And that's something that gets run so often, especially in like red zone. You know what I mean? But he has really good, I think, awareness in terms of like maybe seeing the way the play sets up and then seeing the way the receiver he's responsible for sets the route up, and he just anticipates and guesses like correctly very frequently. I think
he has really good instincts, I would say. That's kind of the thing with him.
Good instincts, natural feel. The one thing I will say though is that I think I know he has like a injury profile that's kind of like,
he's been banged up at times, yeah.
That's why I put him like down a little low. And then one thing I noticed too is that in terms of like physical traits, being fast or whatever it is, I felt like I think he's aware that he's not a recovery speed corner.
Mm-hmm.
He has to anticipate in order to make the play and be on it. And I say that because a lot of times I notice when he plays like off man, because he can play press man and get physical, and he has good punch, good like hand placement, and like I said, he can anticipate that wiggle and be like, "Oh yeah, you're not getting away from me." He's like white on rice. But if he's playing off, he hesitates almost to use those instincts he's using when he's like right on him, and it's like he's like second guessing himself, and he gets beat when he's off. You know what I mean? So he doesn't get that physicality, he doesn't get the delay to timing. And I think that obviously helps in terms of his effectiveness as a corner. So then when he's playing off and the receiver's able to just do whatever they want, he gets beat. And it's like it's almost like he doubts himself. And then I bring up like the recovery speed thing because I think he's aware, like if I get beat, I'm cooked. Because and I say that because like there's a few times I saw on tape where like a guy will drive hard and then plant and turn because they got like really good, start stop quickness. Plant and turn on a curl or something like that, and he's trailing every time. You know what I mean? So he's not anticipating them like stopping immediately and turning, and I think they're just selling the route so well.
Yeah, and I think he's afraid to lose deep. And
yeah,
what I'll say with him, and like this, I'll make it very simple. I view him as like a slightly less athletic, but slightly bigger Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Like I think they both have similar issues where like they don't trust their speed as much. I think they're better coming downhill. When they do make plays, it is in that shorter area of the field. Typically, they don't do as well down the field. Like, but he's a little bit bigger, so I think that style can hold up a little bit better at the next level. But I don't trust his explosiveness. Like you look at the testing numbers, you look at him on tape. You're right. Like I just don't think he has the movement skills to kind of make up for some of the stuff that he will struggle with. Like if a guy gets behind him, if he's a step behind somebody, he's beat. That's just kind of what it is. And in the NFL, especially with the amount of space that's being played with nowadays, you find yourself in that spot more often than corners would like to be. This is kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously, wherever he goes is going to matter a little bit with that too. But like, imagine him trying to like stop with Tyreek Hill, right? Like that. Now, granted, that's an extreme example of that. But we kind of already know the example. We know what happens on that route, right? Like we know it's over before it starts, kind of like he's that type of player. So I think in the right scheme, he could still bring some value, but I do wonder like what is his success rate on the outside going to be, honestly. So I'm not sure if you kind of feel the same way, Jake, or.
Yeah, I think you guys summed him up pretty well. He's not in my top 10. I didn't watch him quite as much as the other guys, but I think you guys summed it up pretty well. For me, it's really just his technique and man coverage is a bit inconsistent. And I don't think he can locate the ball in flight as well. So that's why he didn't fit in my top 10. But I do think he does a lot of things well. He plays with a high motor. He's good in zone coverage. He has good awareness and instincts. But some of his limitations had him a little lower for me. But I do see the positives.
Yeah, he'll be an interesting. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up going, seeing what they do with him. My number 8 guy to finish up number 8 for us is Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. I'm not sure if you guys have him anywhere in your top 10. Jake, do you have him anywhere?
I don't have him.
Okay, and then Felix, you have him anywhere?
Not top 10, but he's 12.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'll give my spiel on Andrew Phillips then. So that kind of the same way for you, Felix. I'm the only one with him in my top 10. I just trust the movement skills and the fact that he's still a younger player that hasn't played a ton of snaps. I think that both hurts him from like a development standpoint, but also helps him for what he has done in those snaps, where I think he has inside-out versatility, played more snaps in the slot in 2022 than outside, kind of flipped that script in 2023. I feel like the main thing that he struggles with is stuff that he's going to be able to get better at. Like I think he has the skills to play in zone coverage. He just isn't quite there with like kind of the same thing you guys are talking about with some other guys, like the anticipation of things in zone, like knowing when to kind of drive on routes, when to convert to man coverage, when to kind of run with guys. That type of stuff still needs to be worked out with him, but I do think you can coach that with a guy, right? Like he has the movement skills to do it. I don't think he lacks any of the explosiveness or any of that. In fact, sometimes I think he kind of trusts his athleticism a little too much, and he will give up space to guys. And that's the one thing, like I would have wanted to put him even higher, but he doesn't really stay attached to guys as often as I want to see in man coverage. Like he gives them just too much space in general, especially in zone where he just doesn't have the feel yet. But even in man, like I think he just knows like, yeah, I can catch back up. Like I can give them some space, almost like not so much baiting the quarterback, but like trying to make it so like, okay, maybe the ball will come my way and I can make a play on it. Right. I would rather him just stick to guys more. And I think the thing I struggle with is I've seen him do that. So I know he's able to physically, and I like the speed and the explosiveness profile. Just do it more. Like you just can't get away with that in the NFL that much, right? Like you can't give quarterbacks windows to throw the ball and expect to always be able to catch up and make a play. So if you can cut that down a little bit, and I think his size is good for what he does. Like I don't think it's great, but it's good enough. And again, I think the explosiveness kind of makes that less of a concern. And I think ultimately, like at the end of the day, and I know we're going to talk about slot defenders next week. I think he'd be a really good slot if it doesn't work out on the outside, and that kind of gets him a higher floor than maybe some of these other guys that I still worry a little bit about that. So But anything you guys want to add with him? Oh, you're muted, Jake. Just so you know.
Okay, my bad.
Very good.
So I had him at 11. So he
Okay,
just
so
missed
yeah,
it.
right around that range. Yeah, Felix, you got him at 12, I think, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think you summed him up pretty well. I think he can be used in a lot of different ways. I think he's good in man and zone for me, and I think he can play both outside and inside. So I think because of that, he's going to be a great depth piece for sure. And I think his ability to be used in so many different ways will get him a lot of snaps. I don't think he locates the ball very well on especially throws down like deeper down the field, and I don't think he's a very good tackler, but he plays tough. Like he's tough against the run. He'll go up and
it's not a
knock
lack
out a
of
lead
willingness.
blocker or
I don't
something.
think. It's just like you said, just isn't great.
Which for me is a good sign because it shows that he's willing to do it. Some corners just are only going to ankle bite and because they don't want to tackle. But he plays tough. He's not scared of contact, so that gives me faith that he can become a better tackler. But yeah, it's a deep class. He probably would be in my top 10 if it was a different year, but just with how deep it was, he ended up at 11 for me.
Right. Yeah. So I get that. Yeah. Anything you want to add there, Felix?
Yeah, not so much. I think Shane, you were the one that said like he might end up being one of those guys. Like I said with like Rakestraw, where it's like maybe he slides inside and then
and he has more experience there than some of the other guys, which helps him a little bit, I think. So
yeah, so I think like in preparation for next week, he's a guy that I might watch more and start saying like, oh shoot, like I have him like 2 or 3 or whatever, in the slot. But I didn't get to watch him as much as some of the other guys. But the thing that kind of stuck out to me was unlike some of the guys that I mentioned before, I felt like the instincts and the playmaking ability wasn't as consistent. And what I mean is like I mentioned with some of the guys before, to me, of who I have said so far, the 3 I've said so far compared to him, he is not as aggressive or as active or as consistently present in the catch point as the other guys are.
And I mentioned about like he doesn't have great, like I've heard it called different things, but like route squeeze is a good way to think about it. Like staying attached and around the ball consistently, like and around the player specifically during the rep. Like sometimes he allows his athleticism to kind of make up for some of that stuff when I think he should be focusing more on just staying attached to the hip of the receivers more often. So
yeah. And I think the other thing was, unlike what I mentioned with Carson in particular, like I think he struggles, especially when there's those combo routes. And it's almost, I really think it's like one of you had said it, where it's like he has the competitiveness. It's not for a lack of trying at all.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's not that.
But I think he second guesses a little bit, and he might like, or just guess wrong, and he'll attack like a certain route that he thinks is going to develop with his responsible guy, and that's not it, and he's just out of position, and like I think that happens often. You even see it in like run support, where like ball goes off tackle and he overruns the play, and he's getting blocked, and he's just out of the play immediately, and that's where I'm like, all right, like you're already like sort of with outside leverage, and you're not like, cracking inside of the receiver blocking you. It's almost like you're seeing the play develop and you're just like, they're coming to me right here. And then you're thinking, let me get on it. You know what I mean? And let me make that play. And then before he knows it, it's like a blur and the play. He's like, oh no.
Yeah. And that's the thing with him is he does have a little less experience than most of these other guys. And that's where I'm like,
and that's why I think
project like, that. But
he get coached up. And I think like his flaws to me more than some of the other guys, it's just experience and coachability. Because I think it's hard to take away that like or it's hard to teach naturally the like tenacity he has. It's like he's over anxious to make the play.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, like run and pass. It's like he's like oh, I know I can make the play here, and then he gets beat.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
It'll be interesting to see kind of where teams value him and how early he goes, because I think that'll determine like how high they think the upside of a guy like him is. So we'll see if he's kind of closer to corner 8 or corner 11 and 12. I guess we'll find out. But let's move to number 7. I know that Jake, you had Ennis Rakestraw at 7.
Yeah.
So your 7's taken care of. My number 7 is Max Melton from Rutgers. I'm not sure where you guys have him, if you have him in your top 10 or where you have him at.
I have him at 6.
I had him at 12.
12, okay. And then Felix, you said where'd you have him at?
At 6.
Okay, 6. Okay, so you and I will have to carry the torch for Max here, because Jake not quite as high on him. But so let's talk about him then. So for me, he's explosive, man. Like his athletic, like it shows up on tape where he has that explosiveness that I think we're missing from a lot of the guys we've talked about so far. Like, I think Phillips is close to that. Like I think he's closer to that physical profile, which you want,
yeah,
and just in terms of like movement skills. But Melton when he gets on his horse, he can go. Like he just has a gear that I think some of these other guys don't have. And like I think of a play against Ohio State specifically where I want to say it was Henderson, I think, running the football, and he broke out. Like Melton was on the opposite side of the field covering somebody on the play, and then he went across the field and caught him before he scored. And Henderson's a really good athlete; he can run. And he ran from the other side of the field, tracked him down, and then stopped the play from being a touchdown. And obviously, it was like on the 5-yard line. But he has that ability to just whenever he takes off, he can really get going faster than a lot of these other guys we talked about. And I think it's important for somebody to have that explosiveness at this position, because look at some of the athletes just in this class at receiver. Not even talking about already existing in the NFL. I mean, some of the guys in this class shouldn't exist. Like it's not fair for them to move like that, run like that. And this is what you're going to be covering at the next level, right? And I think that he's just good in both man and zone. Like I don't think he's excellent in either one, which is why he's a little bit farther down here, despite I think him having really, really good movement skills and the ability to get better in those spots. He's just kind of just good to okay in both of those roles, right? Which does give him flexibility. I think you can play him in pretty much any scheme and just let him rely on his athleticism a little bit to get by at first. But coming from Rutgers, not the most dynamic program in the country, I'll just say that. But again, really good player, NFL bloodlines with his brother Bo, with Packers now, had a good end of the year for him. I remember liking him a lot coming out of also Rutgers as well. So there's a little tidbit there. But again, I just like the physical profile. I think this is the type of player you can take on day 2 and develop into a starting outside corner. So anything you want to add there, Felix, before we let Jake tell us how we're wrong?
Yeah, no, like I said, have him at 6.
Even a little higher than me, yeah.
Yeah, just outside of that top half of the position group. I think the explosiveness is definitively there, like you said. I think the physical profile is just ideal. One thing that sticks out to me is that unlike a lot of the other corners who are sub 190, he plays like he's bigger than that in terms of like playing the catch point, playing aggressive on the receiver. I feel like he does lack in run support at times. I think he takes just bad angles.
He just misses tackles for no reason. That's just something that some of these guys do. It's just
Yeah. And I think my thing is like with corner, it's so man, like it's not a critical, like
right. You're right.
But it is hard to teach a corner, hey man, play with attitude and hit the shit out of this and go downfield. Like if a guy has it and he's just missing tackles, then you can at least help him anticipate angles and such. But like if he doesn't have it, then you're kind of just saying, all right, well, he's not going to be great in run support, and then that's it. But like Melton has the movement skills, the physicality, the aggressiveness. One thing that I think he does really well is that he anticipates like the pacing that a receiver is running at. And I noticed that because like, I think it was Ohio State tape. He like runs with the corner, and it's almost like or the receiver, like he understands
what they're trying to do.
I have the physicality I have the physical talent to keep up with you, but I'm trying to stick with you. I'm not going to overrun it. I'm not going to overplay it until I know the ball's going in your direction. And I just love that kind of like confidence where he's like, yeah, you could be fucking Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, I don't care.
And hey, he had a pretty good day against Ohio State. You got to say that for a team that, I mean, now, granted, it's not like being good against Ohio State like 2 years ago whenever it wasn't McCord throwing the football, but still, it's still good to play well against obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. and like someone who's not on our list, I imagine, considering where we're at, and who probably is going to have to play safety partly because of what Marvin Harrison did to him. Kalen King, also in the Big Ten, did not do as well, against me. Not trying to slander Kalen King right now, but it's
a
just
lot of stray.
Yeah, when you're in the Big Ten and you play Marvin Harrison, yeah, exactly. You're gonna have some reps against him, and you're gonna have to hold up. And some guys did, and some guys didn't. Most guys didn't, but I think Melton did hold his own overall, and that's part of the evaluation. As good as crazy that is to say, one player playing against each other is a big part. For a guy like Harrison, it kind of is important to do well against him if you want to be viewed well. So
yeah. So I like Melton a lot. I think only things that limit him and why I keep him at 6 is just I think those short yardage situations, those red zone situations, I think he can be too hesitant, and I think he succeeds whenever the play or the route is something that develops. Like he's able to anticipate and understand. Wait, all right, like he's quickening his pace right here. Like I can, like he's gonna read and react. But if it's something where it's like set, hike, and then immediately the receiver's cutting inside, it's almost like he's like, oh shit, like this is way quicker than I thought it would be. And like so he gets beat inside a little bit, they cross his face a little bit quick. I think if the ball is over him and he's out of position or he feels like he's not confident in where he's at, he doesn't play hands as consistently. He doesn't play catch point as consistently. Not saying he doesn't do it, but it's almost like when he feels like he got beat, his reaction is not to play the receiver. And even if the receiver catches the ball in their hands, he's not immediately thinking, let me attack their arm, their elbow, their wrist, and jar the ball loose. He's more concerned with like, okay, I can't make it a bigger play. Let me tackle them or whatever it is. And like, so he plays a little conservative in that regard. But I think a lot of his traits, and that's why I have him as 6. I think a lot of his traits are things that like the physical traits are there, but you can coach him up. So he can definitely be a guy who I wouldn't be surprised has a better NFL career, even though his tape is pretty good. Like in the NFL, he ends up having like a solid 8-10 year career where you're like, wow, he was a good corner.
Yeah. Jake, real quick, I'm going to let you give your spiel on why you don't think he's as high as we have him. But I'm going to go ahead and take a guess that the ball skills have a large part to do with it.
Yeah, they're part of it. They're part of it, yeah.
Just based on what you've said so far, like that feels like a big thing. Yeah.
That was one of the things that I was going to say. It's not the biggest thing for me, though.
Gotcha.
Before, you guys, I think, covered him really well. I don't have too much to add.
Okay.
But it's not me thinking that he's not a good prospect, because I really do think
I was just messing with you, but
yeah, no, I know, but he's like, I love his mentality. Like he has, if I'm drafting a cornerback, I want one with that exact mentality. And I like a lot of the things that he does. He's very competitive. I think Felix was kind of talking about, cornerbacks who either want to hit or don't want to hit. He's definitely a guy that wants to hit.
Yes.
He plays on 100% every play. I think the ball skills for me are an issue, but it's not the biggest thing. I think what has him lower on my list is just he's a little bit over aggressive, especially off the line of scrimmage. I noticed a lot of times where he, like, as soon as the ball snaps, he's in press coverage and it's boom, 1-2 in the chest. And when it works really well, and it disrupts the timing and does everything well. But when it doesn't work, he gets out of position. And then from there is when I see things start to get a little bit inconsistent and he has to try to recover. But that is something that definitely can be coached up. I don't think it hurt him a little bit in college. From some of the things I watched, I think if it hurts in college, it's going to hurt a little bit more at the NFL level, but it's definitely something that can be coached up. So it's not a huge concern for me, but it's that kind of over aggressiveness, especially in the press coverage. I don't think his footwork is good enough to kind of recover from that yet. And the ball skills are a little bit of an issue, but I also understand having him at 6, because with his mentality and some of the things that he already does do well, I could see him, like you guys are talking about, having that 8 to 10 year career in the NFL. If he can get some of these issues that I see with him fixed, I do think he can have a very solid career. So it's not him being at 12 for me. It's not a knock against him. It's just I'm a little bit more worried about some of the weaknesses he has. But I see the potential. Like there's a lot of, he's a fun guy to watch. There's a lot of things I saw him do that I'm just like, wow, like this guy plays like a dog.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I don't know. I see he's one of those guys that I kind of see both sides. I understand having him at 6, but I also for myself understand having him at 12.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think, and this kind of goes to your point, Felix, one of the things that is a little bit of a concern with him is I think he brings the fight to the receiver, because he knows if he doesn't, he might not be able to make a play on the ball once the ball's in the air. Like, I think he wants to win the rep immediately and take that player out of the reps. That way he doesn't have to play that way anymore. Like, he can just deal with them, be done with it, move on to the next play, which, again, when it works, it's awesome. When it doesn't, you're like, all right, you got to figure something out still, though. Like, you got to have a plan for that. And I think that's where coaching is going to come in for him. But who is your number 7 then, Felix? Because we haven't talked about your number 7.
Number 7, I have Kamari Lassiter.
Okay, so I will say, Jake, I know you had him.
He's 6 for me.
He's 6 for you, yeah. So I will say he's not on my list because I have him as a slot player after his testing and watching him more. I think he's going to fit better in the slot with his physicality and his quickness. Elite quickness, doesn't have speed. Straight up does not have NFL caliber speed, in my opinion. I worry about him playing in anything except for a very like off-man zone heavy system, which those obviously exist, but it's becoming a little less frequent, I feel like. So the fact that I don't trust him to run with literally pretty much any NFL receiver probably down the field just makes it hard for me to project him anywhere but inside. I think his physicality and his quickness fits better there. So I'll save my kind of spiel on him for next week, but let me know why you have him at 7 then, Felix.
So I'll be honest, like the main reason why I have him at 7 and I don't have him off my list as just a nickel guy, because he was one of the guys that I said I could see being a nickel too. But I think what I liked was how agile. He doesn't have the top end speed. I agree, definitely. He probably would run like I don't know. What
he ran 4.61, I think is what he ran.
4.61. So like, I think the agility and the fluidity that he has in his lower half is the only thing that's going to save him to play outside a little bit, because we got NFL corners that do have like not top end speed and still end up having like decent careers because the football IQ is there and the fluidity is there for the lower half. So their reaction timing is top notch and in comparison to someone who's an elite athlete. So I think he has the potential, and I have him at 7 and in my top 10 is because he has that fluidity. But then I think the way he plays in press, I'm very impressed by. Really good hand fighting. He's really aggressive at the catch point. I mean, if it's not already a given, like being aggressive at the catch point is a big deal for me. And
I get that. I do.
Yeah.
The amount of like big, powerful receivers that are around now, it's just it's important.
And it's just the way, I don't know, like when I was learning how to play corner and everything like that, like the biggest thing, I never had top end speed, but the biggest thing I always did was rake arms, and I was able to like interrupt plays because of that. Right. And it always got me thinking, I'm like, I'm 5'7 3/4 and I'm able to disrupt the play. Imagine a guy who's 5'11 and has elite speed or agility or whatever it is playing against a dude who's 6'2, 6'3. All you got to do is play their arms and react to the ball, and like you can disrupt that play. And I think sometimes guys overthink or they get they don't react in time or whatever it is. I think he has that feistiness. I love that he's able to marry his hands with his feet really well in terms of movement skills. It's just he lacks top end speed, and he can't like throttle to like another gear to catch up to somebody if he gets beat. He doesn't have recovery speed. But I think instincts are there. He's confident, especially when it's like we're playing press, it's almost like he craves it. Like he's like, oh
yeah, and
I'm going to beat the hell out of this receiver like in the first 5 yards. He plays aggressive ball, and I like that a lot. But I understand where you're coming from, where if he were to slide inside and bring that aggression from there, playing against slot receivers, playing in run support, playing on, those rare blitz packages where he's like just coming downfield like a bat out of hell, you could really see. And then the agility profile is excellent to come off the edge.
Yes. Right.
You know what I mean? And blitz off of the perimeter like that. So I could definitely see it. I just was impressed enough by his tape to say, I think he could play outside. If he were, I could see a team drafting him to be a nickel guy and then injuries force him outside because of his experience. And he ends up holding up okay because I think the agility profile is there. And it's funny because you have a lot of guys who have like good top end speed and they can't wiggle. They have no agility. Yeah. So that's where I'm like, I think, the play develops in like a matter of seconds. If he's in the right spot because he can flip his hips and react in enough time that the quarterback just looks away, it doesn't matter that he ran a 4.6.
You're right.
Yeah. That's kind of why I have him where I have him in my top 10 and the perimeter, because I think all it takes is for him to play that route correctly, especially with how aggressive he is in press. And the quarterback's going to look and be like, nope, he's not open, and look away. And in that moment, Kamari Lassiter's like, thank God. And it's just like running as it goes because he has that reaction time and lower half of the But I like
Jake. But Jake, before I I kind of gave my spiel already, and I'll save more of it for like the positives at least for next week. But anything you want to add to what Felix said here, since he's number 6 for you, you said.
Yeah. I think Felix summed it up pretty well. I'm honestly more. I see all the things that I think would make him a great slot corner, but I'm honestly more confident in his ability to play outside than Sanders still. I think he's even better suited out there. He doesn't have the long speed. I really wish he did, because I think he might be like the perfect cornerback.
This is what I was about to say. I wanted to mention that I think if you put everything about him that is good, and you put him in like Max Melton's body, you'd have like a top 3 corner, in the draft. But he just doesn't, right? That's just But go ahead.
I think Felix summed it up really well, because he doesn't have the long speed, but he is quick enough to not, unless he's getting burnt just off the ball, he's quick enough to make up for it in the short areas. I do have a couple of concerns. Obviously, the long speed, and there's a couple of times where I would catch him looking in the backfield, and see what's going on, and then he's turning around, and the receivers beat him, and he doesn't have the makeup speed.
Yeah, he can't make a mistake
catch back
like that.
No. I noticed it especially in zone coverage because in man coverage he's good. He's able to stay with the receiver, and that's his focus. Like, he's not worried about what's going on in the backfield as much. But in zone, you got more space. He has like a second or two off the line to look, and I noticed a couple of times he would get stuck looking back there, and then the receiver gets behind him, and he doesn't have the speed to catch up. And I didn't see him make that many plays on the ball, at least from what I saw, but he plays very competitive, and he does a ton of things well. I think he can be used pretty well, both inside and outside. His hips, he's very fluid. He can change direction quickly, which helps make up for the lack of top end speed, and he has good instincts. So there's a lot of things that he does well that I think he'll translate pretty well to the NFL. But yeah, that top end speed is my biggest concern with him, I would say.
Yeah, and like, just to kind of put a bow on that, and then I'll go to my number 6 guy, is like, I think my ultimate issue is that every time I go through what I think his strengths are, I'm like, slot. Like, that's a slot player. It's like, that's not a bad thing, though. I want to stress that. Like, I would still probably take him on day 2 to be a slot defender. Like, in terms of draft value, like, I don't think his draft value will end up taking as much of a hit as it could have, because of how good he is at those certain things. And I think a lot of teams will be able to talk themselves into saying, like, okay, maybe he isn't an outside guy for us, but we don't have a slot that we trust. We don't have somebody who has the physicality, the quickness, the instincts to do stuff in the slot that can be a playmaking type slot. I think he has it, right? And you can mitigate the speed concerns and the inability to kind of make up for plays that he makes mistakes on. It's just I think it's just a cleaner transition to me. I think he translates better skill set wise to there. And you can make the same argument about guys even higher up on this list, I think, especially one. But I just don't know if I would trust him on the outside for like the vast majority of teams, is what it kind of comes down to. And, so we'll talk more about the strengths for that for next week. But to give you guys an idea too, I kind of wanted to take a look at this. His like high, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Mock Draftable, like the site where you can kind of get, you know what I'm talking about. The guy like Julian Love is a really common one for him. Apparently he has a lot of, which safety, obviously, kind of at this point. Some other guys are in that same, like Darian Kendrick is a guy that's very interesting because he also very slow, very bad 40, but has played okay on the outside for the Rams. Like, it's not impossible. I just feel like if we're maximizing him, I wonder if it just has to be the slot if you want to get the best out of him. So but to my number 6 guy, so I recognize him probably higher, and maybe not, depending on where you guys are at. I'm not sure if he's going to be in your top 10 or how many of you will have, if both of you will have in your top 10. Renardo Green out of Florida State is my number 6 corner. And Jake left the building as soon as I said that. No, I'm sure he's doing something. No, but Felix, before I talk about it, do you have him in your top 10 anywhere?
Man, I do not.
Okay.
I have him at 13.
Okay.
And I will tell you this, the only reason why he's at 13 is because he's one of the prospects I couldn't get a lot of tape.
Okay, that's okay. Jake, do you have him anywhere? I assume
same boat as Felix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude. Okay, so this is someone I already have Renardo. Yeah, all right. No, I'm not. Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, Noah.
Yeah, there we go. Listen. This guy, he just kicks ass. That's the best way I could describe it. This dude just kicks ass. Like, if you just put on the LSU tape, if you haven't watched the LSU tape of him, if you're able to get it, if you don't, like, I might even, especially if you two haven't been able to get it for any reason, or if you can't watch it, I will sit down and watch it with you guys on this platform if I have to show you. He, for the most part, absolutely dominated the LSU receivers in press man coverage. Like, just ate them up. And in this class with those two as receivers that are coming out, that means something to me. And it's not just the LSU team, like his ability to impress specifically. Now, I don't know how good he's going to be in zone when he's asked to be in zone, because he's going to be asked to be in zone at times. I think the athletic profile is good, but just not elite. Like, I don't think he's as athletic as a guy like Max Melton, stuff like that. But man, like, he just hits dudes in the face, sticks with guys in man coverage, does not allow separation very often. I watch him. I'm like, man, if the right defensive coordinator gets this guy and can have him just kind of be an eraser type, like throw him on whatever receiver, especially if they don't handle press well, throw him on that guy. He won't play. That'll be the end of the game, I think, for him. Like, that's the type of press man corner I think you're getting with him. The problem why I don't have him over the top 5 guys that I have, and they're probably going to be similar top 5, I'm sure, if not all the same top 5 for us, is just he didn't do it as consistently as some of the other guys, and also I do think he's a little bit limited to that style of coverage. I think he can do some off-man stuff. If he's in man coverage in general, I like him. It's when you get in the zone where it's like, you still have to be able to play zone in the NFL. Like, you can't just man up all the time. Some teams do that more often than others. Like, I personally want him as a Steeler, like tomorrow. Him and Joey Porter on the same team. Forget about doing anything with receivers against us. Forget about it. But I do think he is a little bit more scheme dependent. So that's why this is the highest I'm willing to have him, basically, is where I'm with him. So, I know you guys haven't watched a lot of them, but if you do have any things you want to mention, you go for it.
I will say I have heard a lot about him. I only got like a couple games of tape. One of them was the LSU tape, and that was the tape that made me say, "Dear God!" Like,
yeah, if he can do that more often, yeah, but he does have to do it more often.
I will say that's the thing with him is just the consistency, and I think that's also a big thing with any rookie.
Right.
Is just consistency, and then when you get to the NFL, consistency is a big deal too because you're playing bigger talent. So, like, but everything I have like just heard or read about him is just that he is such a tenacious and awesome player. And I'm forgetting who it was I saw on Twitter, but someone had said they would like, don't be surprised if he goes higher than you think.
I think that's possible too, because he tested well enough at the combine. He tested well at pro day and stuff. Like, I think that's what everyone was waiting to see was he going to test well enough? Because I thought he was a good athlete on tape, but I didn't think he was anything special. Pretty much exactly what he tested as, a really good, just not elite athlete.
Yeah.
Right? And that checked the box for me to have him at least. Like, I would take him at the top of day 2, like somewhere in that range. I think taking him in the first is definitely a reach just because of like you said, the inconsistency and the fact that he's kind of not necessarily just a one-trick pony, but like definitely a man coverage guy for sure. But yeah, that's what I would say with him.
Yeah.
Anything you wanted to throw out there, Jake, before we get into our top 5?
No, I think you guys summed him up pretty well. I'm not really too educated on him, so I don't have too much of a valuable opinion.
He's fun. Definitely, if you get a chance before the draft, I'd try to see if you can check him out. But let's get our top 5 then. So all of our top 10 through 6 should be done. I don't think any of us have talked about any top 5 guys, which is nice because it means now we have kind of a nice smooth runway to kind of get into our top 5. I'm going to start with actually Jake here. Who do you have at number 5?
So I have Nate Wiggins at 5.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And I was kind of saying this to Shane before the show, but my top 5, I could understand like them being ordered in any way because they're all, I honestly think all 5 of these in my top 5 are Pro Bowl caliber. Like they could,
like Pro Bowl ceiling corners.
Yeah, like they could get there. So, but yeah, I have Wiggins at 5. His size and stature is much better than I think a lot of corners in this class. He's very smart and he plays very competitive. Run defense, I'm a little worried about again for corners. You know, it's not a huge thing for corners, but if they just can't really do it, then you know it can be a worry, especially at the NFL level. I also noticed that he has kind of an issue with stopping and starting, like coming to a stop and then getting back into speed. That was something I noticed. But he does a lot of things well. He's patient in man coverage. He doesn't get like, he can be physical with his size, but he doesn't get like over aggressive and too physical at all. I think he's got solid footwork. He's got good eye discipline. I don't really see him get caught like staring in the backfield and then passed up on the route. So he does a lot of things well. And I think his game will translate well to the NFL, but his ability to stop and start and change direction, I wasn't too big of a fan of. He doesn't have the best speed. I'm not sure what his 40 time was.
Wiggins,
at least when I was watching him,
he ran 4.27, I think, or 4.28.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Maybe I'm wrong about that then.
I will say I'll talk about him too, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. When I was watching him, I one of the things I was a little worried about was his speed, but I did not realize that he ran a 4.2. So that could be just me on that one. But
there's some reps that I'll talk about that I know why you probably feel that way, and there's other times where I'm like, holy shit. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. But But yeah, his run defense and his ability to change direction kind of are worrisome for me. So I had him down at 5. But again, I do think he can reach the Pro Bowl in his career. I think he has that potential. Real quick, Felix, where do you have him at?
Exact same spot, number 5.
5. Okay, cool. So I have him at 4. So we have a little bit of a difference here, but it's essentially the same idea. Real quickly, I'll just say, like, I think why it's the speed didn't always come out, I think, for Jake, is that there is times where he lets some stuff get like stacked and then like he just doesn't make a play on the ball down the field. And receivers will be able to run not by him necessarily, but get enough separation from him to make a play on the football. However, when he really gets up and goes. There's a play that if you haven't seen it, you should definitely look it up. Just this play specifically against North Carolina, when the running back Marion Hampton, who I actually, by the way, was when I was watching Wiggins, I could not stop watching that guy. Holy shit, can that dude run the football? Really excited about him next year. But besides the point, I think there was a play where he's running up the sideline, right? And looks like a touchdown for sure, no question about it. And then Nate Wiggins comes out of freaking nowhere and punches the ball out right before he gets to the goal line. And I'm talking like everyone else is running, and he just looks like a different like player on the field compared to everyone else running down the field. Now, I do think that part of the reason why he doesn't always look like he's as fast as he is he does get bodied a little bit down the field, and I think it knocks him off the receivers too often, and that might contribute to like the thought of like, oh, is he not as fast as I think because he's not always there at the catch point. He just if he doesn't like stay enough, give himself enough space from the receiver, and the receiver bumps him a little bit, his frame is just very wiry. He's he came in at 173 at the combine, but he came in at like 185 as pro day. Apparently he was sick at the combine, which is crazy. He ran like a 4.2 still, but whatever.
Yeah.
But like it did help he was lighter, I guess. But the problem is he still is a wiry player. 6'2", 185 is probably his play weight, maybe 180. And the tackling, like you said, is a big issue because of that. Also, and this is my biggest concern with him and why like this type of profile would usually like even more than in this class than where I have him before. He's tall, but he's not long. Like his arm length, I think, was like 30, like right around 30, 31, which is good, but not as good as you might think for his frame, right? So it does affect him in run defense too, because he can't wrap up quite as good as you might think with his frame. So there's definitely a lot of things to like, and like the recovery speed is phenomenal when he shows it off.
Mm-hmm.
But I do wonder, how often is that going to help him if he is getting beat up down the field a little bit? And we actually had a comment, how does Wiggins compare to Forbes from last year? For me, my issue is just that Forbes was so small that he literally had no chance against like receivers who were even slightly big. Like with Wiggins, I'm not as worried about that because I think he can handle himself better and he's faster than Forbes, even more athletic in space, especially. But it is that same kind of concern of like, can he hold up against the like alpha number one receivers? Can he be the guy that covers that? Or is he going to be more of a corner two at the next level who maybe handles guys who are a little bit smaller, faster types? So that's a question definitely with him. But anything you want to add there, Felix?
I think you guys summed it up well. I had him at number 5. I think there's just the clear athleticism in terms of the top end speed. I think his movement skills, short area is pretty good too. I will say, like, I've seen before people mention like, oh, I like this kid, but I also liked Forbes, and Forbes didn't do well his rookie year. And then there's that comparison. I will say, I think, in my opinion, Wiggins is a little bit. He has like a little better of a frame because he's like 20 pounds heavy. But
yeah, like Forbes was like 166 at the combine. Exactly. He was generationally small, we'll call it, as much as that sounds weird, but that's what I would call it.
And that's what I think Wiggins has even though he's still a smaller frame guy, like he's slightly heavier. But he plays like he's slightly heavier. And what I mean by that is, like, even though he's fast and quick like that, when he decides he wants to be aggressive and play the catch point and
he can do that
and be involved, he does that. Mm-hmm. And I think what helped Forbes is that Forbes is the opposite of what you had said Wiggins is, where like Forbes is long. Forbes had like the arm length and all of that. So like he can disrupt the catch point if he's out of position because he can react and get his hand in there. I think Wiggins is just period in a better position overall. He's not reaching out and deflecting the ball or like playing the ball only. He can play the receiver well. But I think you guys summed it up well, where it's like, yeah, like what run support, first of all. And then like, I think the aggression and tenacity that I like seeing from a corner is very inconsistent from him at the catch point. And that's why I say, like, when he decides he wants to be like an asshole at the catch point, he can do it. But it's like, I think he plays a little passive sometimes and wants to just get the incompletion rather than be like physical and body out a receiver or something like that. And I think sometimes there are moments where he will get a little overconfident with his speed, and I think he gives a little bit of space on receivers because he wants to almost lull the quarterback, so then he can
Yeah,
go
because
and
he
play
wants to jump the ball and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he like does that a little bit too often, and then there's a quarterback with like either a crazy good arm or the
Drake
receiver
May?
gets more space on him.
North
Yeah,
Carolina.
receiver gets
Yeah.
more space on him and more separation than he anticipated, and the ball is like a crazy completion. So I think that, and this is where like the conversation about the corner class being a solid class comes into play, because I think those are definitely coachable traits. Like those are things that you look at and you knock them, but you say like, I think we could make him better than we're going.
Yeah, because he doesn't lack the physical traits to do it, and that's the
Exactly.
key thing.
Yeah, and even though he's a light in the pants guy, he plays aggressive. He
plays hard. He definitely plays more up to like close. I think he plays about as aggressive as he can be. Yeah.
The play you mentioned where he's chasing the ball downfield. I mean, like that tenacity is something you want.
Yeah, very much the effort is there. Yeah.
I just think he gets a little too overconfident with his speed, and he's like, I want to get a pick on this play. And the receiver's like, cool, dude, like give me 10 yards of cushion.
Yeah, right. Cool. I'll take my 8-yard throw. Yeah.
Yeah. So I could honestly see him. I have him at 5 because I think like that's something that's definitely coachable, but I just feel like his floor to me is he's going to be a solid number 2 corner for like a while. He's going to have a long career, and he's going to be a suitable player for like multiple kinds of defenses. I just don't know if he'll ever be like the guy, because I feel like I said, the aggression, the tenacity, it's not something that just pops off the tape all the time. He just comes off a little passive to me, and that's why I'm like, all right, you got the physical traits.
It's funny, Felix. So like I was trying to come up with like a comp for him. I know we don't do a lot of comps because it's usually flawed. Like nobody is the same as someone else, really. But if you put it in mock draftable, Wiggins' profile physically, you know the first guy that pops up and who I was kind of thinking of sometimes when watching him. You'll know him very well. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie.
Honestly,
I can see it.
6'2", sub 190, aggressive playmaking type corners. Don't have a ton of, like you said, weight to them. Gonna let stuff up sometimes because they're trying to make plays. And he played a long time. He played a long time. He was a very good player.
I was going to say, DRC was a way better player in the second half of his career than the first half.
When he started getting a little bit smarter, So.
I could see Wiggins being like an 8th-year veteran going to the Pro Bowl for some reason.
Yes, that would be funny. That would be funny. That'd be very funny, but no.
Finally put it all together.
Finally put it all together when he's now a 4-4 guy instead of a 4-2 guy. No. So my number 5 real quick is Kool-Aid McKinstry. So he's the guy, and I'll ask you guys where you have him in a second, but he is, to me, the baseline corner in this class. If you need somebody tomorrow who needs to start games and play passable outside corner for you in the NFL, he can do that. Beyond that is where I have a little bit of questions. I think the long speed isn't quite there as much as I'd like it to be. I think he's about as smart as he gets, and to play corner for Nick Saban as long as he has, and for as many snaps as he has, as younger player especially, you have to be. So you like the floor. But the question ultimately is, especially like even in Nate Wiggins, who again I have over him for this reason, can he hit the ceiling of the other guys in this class that are up here at this point? Or is he a player again you take because you need somebody to start for be a number 2 corner for you who can hold that down and probably play it very well for almost a decade probably. That's how he profiles to me. And I've even heard people say like maybe he could be a safety because of the smarts, and I think he's a good tackler. Like that could also be in his future, but I do view him as just like a really solid press man, especially outside number 2 corner. And I think in today's NFL with the receivers you have to cover, that's worth taking in the back end of the first round. Where it's like, maybe he's never going to be like a perennial Pro Bowler, or maybe even like I said, your number 1 corner on a good defense at least, especially I should say that. But he's going to hold down a spot for you for a long time. So that's kind of my spiel on him. I'm not sure if you guys have him like 4 or 3, but where do you guys have him at?
I have him at 3.
3. Okay. Gotcha.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to give my whole spiel if you had anything to say.
Where do you have him at, Felix?
I was just going to say I have him at 4.
4. Okay, cool. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I'm so sure that he's going to be good in the NFL. Like I'm just
that's kind of
confident.
My thing. It's like I know he's going to be good.
I don't even
like,
really have too much to say about him because there's not a lot of things that I don't think he does well. He has great body control. He's got great lateral agility, and he doesn't even play like press man super aggressively, but because of his body control and
very
agility,
smart.
he can just stick.
Smart.
He could stick to a receiver without even really having to use his hands in man coverage. He's just very athletic. He's competitive at the catch point. He doesn't track the ball that well, and that was one of the things that had him not in my top 2. But he kind of makes up for that a little bit because he's competitive when it's coming down. Like he's at least putting in the effort to go and high point the ball. It's just something that he might need to work on a little bit. And he does. I didn't notice him use his hands too much when he was in man coverage, and because of that, it was a little harder for him to cover physical receivers who are using that, and also kind of in and out of breaks in the route where there's a little push or a little something the ref doesn't see, but a little way to create separation. But again, he's pretty agile and he's very smooth in his transitions, so I think that helps make up for it a bit. But yeah, for me, I have him at 3 just because, like you said it pretty well, Shane. Like if there's a game tomorrow, I'm confident in him just shutting down.
He's one of those guys.
Part of the field. Yeah.
Anything you want to add there, Felix?
Yeah, I want to duplicate your thought, Shane, where this is the first corner in my top 10 that I felt like if he just for some reason was just absolute ass at corner for some reason, like I could put him
like,
at
what
safety.
am I supposed to? Yeah, but like, what am I supposed to do also with this? But play at safety, yeah.
Yeah, like I honestly could play him at safety. I think he'd be great. Like he's very intelligent. I think good movement skills. Really
especially
good.
The short area burst is really good. I think the long speeder is a little iffy.
Area.
I don't think he can hit that gear, but he's really good in the short areas, especially.
Yeah, and what I love about him is I said this about Wiggins, but like just now, but like I think Kool-Aid's that next guy in my top 10 that I can see playing for like a decade. And I say that because like for me, it's technique. And I think he plays so often with like his shoulders mirroring his like knees and his ankles. His balance is there. His movement skills are good. I think his hand usage is really good. I think he marries his hands with his feet really well. The main things I knocked him on is I think he is like the opposite of Wiggins in that I think he has the body and physicality to be a run defender, but he just doesn't. Like Wiggins, I think, is a willing run defender, but he's just light and he gets thrown out the club. But Kool-Aid is like, yeah, I can tackle this running back, but I just don't feel like it. And I say that because there's
a part of it, Felix, real quick, is that he doesn't really miss tackles when he tries to tackle people. He just doesn't really put a lot of effort in, and that's maybe why he doesn't have as many. But like, he graded very well as a run defender, I think, in general. But how often is he going to get involved? I guess is the question with that. So
and that's why he's at 4 for me. Like I just look at it as like it's a thing that I look at, and to me, the guys I have above him in my top 3 are guys that like if the balls ran in their direction, they're like getting aggressive with the opposing receiver and trying to make the play. Whereas him, I think he's like, oh no, I'm getting blocked. And then like
oh no,
he can make the tackle for sure, but it's just like I don't see that like assertiveness like a Devin Witherspoon, when he came out, and it was just like you run off tackle in his direction, and Devin Witherspoon wants to take the head off of that running back and wants to be an impact player. Like I didn't see that from him that much. And then I think he honestly, for me, he's the first player that I look at and I think the intelligence is there and the technique is there. But I think even though he doesn't have like the elite sort of like measurable traits like a Nate Wiggins, I think he's like Wiggins in that he can get a little bit overconfident because he's like, I know what this play is going to be. And then the play is not what he thinks. And he's like, fuck. And he's like trying to adjust. Like, yeah, but like, he's such an intelligent player. He has such good technique. He's good in terms of anticipating routes and really good reaction timing. But I think he leans on it so much, and like he's a little overconfident, plays a little overconfident. And I say that because like there are times where he out of nowhere he'll just get beat, and you're like, where did that come from? And I think he just kind of lulled on the play. And then I think sometimes his hand placement can be a little bit questionable in terms of when he wants to get feisty. And then he's just like blown off like the catch point and has nowhere to be physical on the catch point.
Right.
But those are things that are so inconsistently happening that I think he's such a safe pick. So like I would not be surprised if he is like end of the first round because he's that safe, in my opinion, of a player. And I think he's going to have a long career because I think he could shift to safety when he's older and end up like being a good cover player because he's that sound in terms of technique already as a rookie. That's like impressive to me.
Yeah. Before I let Jake, who I assume is going to break my heart a little bit with who he has it for, I'm just going to take a guess at that. We'll find out. I just feel like with him, at the end of the day, you're going to probably get a really good player. And for some teams, like I look at the Lions. Now, the only issue is the Lions might not love his tackling and like the way, or not just his tackling, but the way he attacks the run. So maybe that's not a great fit. But like they did go out and get Carlton Davis, but unfortunately, we know kind of what happened with one of their corners. We'll just say that. I'm not going to bring him up right now. It hurts too much. But I think they can still use corner help. And I think a team like them that's like, we just need people who can play at that spot, like who can actually play. That makes a lot of sense. But what do you have for me here, Jake, for number 4?
All right. At number 4, I have Terrion Arnold.
Oh, well, you still kind of broke my heart, but that's okay. I thought it was someone else. But anyway, go ahead. Give me your spiel on Arnold here real quick before I tell you where I'm at and where Felix is at.
All right. Him and his teammate Kool-Aid were very, very close for me. I ended up going with Kool-Aid just over Arnold. Yeah, it was real tough. But Arnold does, as the other 5 in the top of my list do, a lot of things really well. He's very explosive. He's got good ball skills, which I'd find a way to mention with every prospect somehow. But it's just something that stuck out to me. And he's very, very physical in the run game, which again, he's one of those guys who is willing. He's strong as well, so he's pretty successful.
Very strongly built.
He's a force in the run game. If he's not going to make the tackle, he's at least taking out a lead blocker and freeing up a teammate to make a tackle. I think he could use a little bit of patience in press coverage. I think he can be a little over aggressive sometimes. And I think receivers who know how to run routes really well can kind of mess with his technique a little bit. The average receiver, he's going to be solid, but receivers who run just run good routes and do little things to mess with the cornerbacks, I saw a couple times had success against him. But again, this is a guy who I think will be a great corner in the NFL. I think he has Pro Bowl caliber ceiling. And he does a ton of things well. Again, I think he's explosive. He plays the ball well. He's physical and he's smart. And those are a lot of very good qualities to have as a cornerback. So I think he'll have a very good career.
Felix, where do you have him at?
Terrion Arnold's number 1 for me.
He's number 1 for me too.
All right.
So Felix and I agree there. This was tough for me because as someone who wants desperately to be able to afford to and actually have reason to go to the Senior Bowl, there's a Senior Bowl player that I really wanted to put at number 1, but I decided to go against my heart and not do that. Arnold, ultimately, for me, he profiles as somebody that I simply just don't think that guys are going to be able to get away from in coverage very often. And at the next level, with the amount of space that is involved and with the amount of guys who can run the way they can, somebody who has really well-rounded athleticism. Like he's not a burner, but he has enough speed to not get run by. It's just everything about him screams like day one starter. Let's go. We can get this done. More so even than Kool-Aid, because I think with him, I'm not as worried about him not being able to one, play the run, and two, like I think he just has more in his bag as a coverage defender. Like the quickness is elite. Like the only guy that probably tested better than him in quickness was Lassiter, but there's not many guys that did test for quickness, so that's probably part of it. But you watch, like he just doesn't get shook. Like you cannot shake this guy, generally speaking. Like especially if he can read out what's happening, and he's a younger player, so he's going to get better at that over time. It's just really hard to get away from this guy. Like that's what it comes down to for me is like if you're gonna try to beat him, you pretty much have to try to get him in a bad spot running down the field, because if it's in front of him, you're not gonna shake him. You're not gonna get around him very easily. And I think he's gonna be a better playmaker on the ball even than he was last year at the next level, because that quickness plays against these timing routes and these routes that need to be thrown with certain anticipation. Like guys like, and I hate to bring this name up because every time I do, I feel like I'm going to get destroyed on Twitter, but luckily probably not many of them are going to be watching this. A guy like Tua would get picked off by this guy like 3 times a game. Like, because he's just throwing to spots. Like, that's what, like, you know what I mean? Like, he can stay with guys and beat them to the spot so often that I'm like, if you're playing a timing-based offense, he's probably going to F everything up for you. Like, that's just kind of what he does, right? So I just trust him the most of these top guys to be like a perennial Pro Bowl level corner. Like, I just feel like the floor is very high and the ceiling maybe not as high as especially like the number 2 guy on my list that we'll get to, but close enough to that where I'm not gonna really worry about it. I forget who said this. I saw it recently, so if they see this, sorry I stole this from you, but I will say this is not me that came up with this first. Chris Harris Jr. was thrown around as a comp for him, and when he was at his best, that was one of the best corners in the league for the Broncos, right? So that type of player, I'm definitely taking high in the first round. Now in a class like this, probably outside of the top 10, because we kind of know the top 10 players are mostly going to be offensive players, but still a guy that I just can't really like. I just love watching him play. So, but go ahead, Felix. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I love Terrion Arnold. I think Terrion Arnold is. I think Terrion Arnold is the best way I can put it, and that's for people who have seen our edge rusher episode. Terrion Arnold is the Jared Verse of this corner class to me, where he may not be the most physical, most technically refined, whatever it is, but he's just always on the ball. He's a playmaker. He's always present. He's active. He's physical. And I love the fact that he is just an explosive and confident corner. And I think the confidence and the ability to recover, and what I mean by recover is not literally like recovering on a route, but like he could get beat on like 3 straight drives and then finish the game shutting that receiver down, because he plays with that technique, that confidence, that tenacity. And I just really love how aggressive he is. I love how aggressive he is against run plays. I noted that he's like particularly aggressive in like on screen plays, which
he will he tries to blow up screens every time.
It frustrates the hell out of me when I see a screenplay develop and the
corner's just like I don't know.
Yeah, stop playing catch and go downhill and get aggressive. And like Arnold's that one dude that like every time they throw a screen like on his side of the field, it's like he's offended. He's like get that. This is the play call. Like I'm just gonna kill this guy now.
Yeah,
but like I think biggest knocks, you guys covered it. Like he can be a little bit over aggressive. I think sometimes in terms of zone, he can lack a little bit here and there. I think he's definitely a better man cover corner.
Yeah, his quickness just shows up so much in the man stuff because he's just
and
that's mirroring receivers.
That's what's interesting to me is like it's like when he has to sit there and just react to movement, he's gonna move and he's gonna be quick twitch and he's gonna make a play. But when he has to sort of like backpedal a little and hover and anticipate and maybe like trigger down like in a zone play or something like that, it's almost like he's like a hair late, and there's a little bit of a hesitancy, and it's almost like he just doubts what he's seeing. And he's like, oh, I don't want to like turn my hips and the ball's coming under me or something like that. So
like, he is a 2-year starter. He doesn't have as much experience as some of the other guys, but
so I think
it's
coachable for sure, and like, but I also think like it's something that can happen and can grow. I think he could play in the slot eventually. He doesn't play in the slot ever.
I think he actually profiles somebody who can travel to, like, if there's a receiver, if the receiver this week is a slot receiver that's the most dangerous, we can put him on him. If it's an outside, like, I think you're going to be able to do that because of the well-roundedness of his athleticism. So
exactly, yeah. But otherwise, I think everything. If there's anything else that you can note that's negative for him, I think it's coachable, and I think he just profiles as a really high floor. And maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling of the class.
Right. I have one guy that I definitely think has a higher ceiling, but
but I think like we're probably in agreement on that. But I really believe he's the guy that's like, I don't know, like I have a number one because I think he's the corner that you want to pick because he's the one that's sort of more guaranteed to hit in terms of like what you're expecting week to week, what you're expecting from a professional. Like he handles his responsibilities game to game consistently, and he'll get beat here and there, but it's like he's not getting embarrassed. He's not getting like exposed or, that's something that really stuck out to me. It was like he's always in a pretty good position, and that's really hard to teach.
Yeah. That's pretty much our spiel on Arnold. I think that having him at 1 and you having him at 4, Jake, right? He was number 4 for you, right?
Yeah.
Like you said it yourself though, like all these guys in your top 5 are kind of in the same category.
Oh yeah, I could totally make the argument for him being like if someone told me like you have to argue for him being number 1, I feel like that would not be.
You could do it, yeah. So let's go to number 3. So I know you had I think you've already said your 3, Jake, right?
Yeah, I
had Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah.
So Felix, who's your number 3 guy? I wonder if we match up here.
So my number 3 guy is a guy that I think some people are going to have as a safety.
Yep.
But I will tell you this: he's a first-round pick, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It might be the first white boy first-round pick. But I love Cooper DeJean.
Win for the Whiteys, Felix. Not you're me, yeah, me.
Don't say Whiteys. No.
Listen, Felix, I can do that. All right. Honestly, you can do it. I'd be like, yeah, fair. That's all right. I don't care, dude. I love when people call. Let's just skip this, guys.
I love his game, and this is the biggest thing that I wrote. Like when I was watching him play, he's just the poise is what stuck out to me. He never panics. He's never beat or like overplays the play. Like he's always in a good position to at least make a tackle. And I think like that might sound like a bare minimum like requirement for a defender, but like
there's a lot of guys who don't do that though.
Yeah, there are guys that they'll overread a route or they'll, over anticipate to get a little over aggressive or whatever it is, or they'll be lagging or they'll be a little bit behind or, they're playing trail technique. They can't recover. It seems like he can do everything that you want. But what I love is that like, if he gets beat or not, it does not change his confidence going to the next down. Doesn't change his confidence going to the next quarter, the next game. He plays like I think you said it, Shane, like a couple episodes ago. We were talking about defensive tackles, and you're like, if there's a guy who plays like lower level competition, you want to see this dude dominating. And it's funny because like he plays at Iowa. He's playing at like a pretty good program and like D1 and everything.
Defensive program for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I might have scored more points than them last year, but
right. No, but like what gets me about DeJean is like he plays. Like he has a physical profile, he's an athletic player, but I feel like he's playing slow. Like when I watch his tape, it seems like he's like taking, like it's almost like
I don't know, Felix. I don't know.
And I'm just like, I'm like, all right, like you seem like you want to, jump this route and you want to like, anticipate it and deflect it ahead of time. But he almost like, it seems like he doubts. And he hesitates, and he's got the trigger, and he's got like the fluidity to say like, oh, I'm gonna play this ball like right now. I'm gonna read and react, but he's always like a tick late, a tick late, a tick late, and it'll be like incompletion, tackle, or like he breaks and the ball ends up going like his side of the field, but to a different receiver or something like that. So he's reading the eyes and he's like, oh wait, let me play on this guy. So he's like a hair late, but I don't think he's a hair slow. You know what I mean? Where it's like he's got the physical trait. It's just I think it's up here where he's like, is it going my way? Or like, should I play it? Like, do I want to play over aggressive and then like ball goes over my head and I don't get it and it's a bigger completion? Like he's almost playing conservative to play safe.
Yeah, I mean it's tough playing corner at Iowa where every time the other team scores a touchdown, you lose.
Yeah.
So it sucks. You know, it's really hard to be aggressive when one play might be the end of the game. It might be first quarter. You're like, ah, shit, we'll get them next week, boys.
Could be the game-winning drive in the first quarter. You never know.
Like, damn. Yeah, it's like shit, man. I guess we'll play next week. You know.
Yeah.
They scored 7. All right, let's go.
We're done.
Maybe that's the thing is they were so.
I think some of that.
Like, he's like, all right, whatever, but like, I think he just plays very, very calm, and he has the physical traits to end up being a good perimeter corner for a long time. And then I think also why I have him high is he's that next dude. I said Kool-Aid. He's that next guy that I would say, like, yeah, he could play safety and you could put him wherever. You could put him at nickel. He's going to play. I think his baseline is good. It's good, period. And it's just where's the ceiling at the most wherever you want to shift him around to. But I think the versatility is so paramount that you really think like, man, wherever I put him, like if I ask him to do something, he's going to at least play it in a conservative way where a big play won't happen there. So I feel comfortable with him being deep safety, nickel, outside, whatever it is. But, you know, I think one thing that I will say as a knock at least is just because I'm just sitting here talking like so highly of him and he's number 3. But like even though he has a physical profile, I think
he's white. So, you know, you can say I'm just kidding.
No, but like my thing with him is like and I get hesitant when I like critique this because I think there is moments where he's, like I said, he's not slow. He's just late sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think his build gets in the way of it because when you watch him play,
he's a bigger corner. Yeah.
He's a big ass dude. Like he looks
6'1", 205 roughly. I think he came in at a pro day. Yeah.
And that's the thing is like he looks like a safety, but he plays perimeter corner. Like if he shed 10 pounds, I feel like he would be an electric player that can move around a little bit better, but he just seems like
he would lose some of the physicality, and then you're like, yeah, it's like okay.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, what do I do with him? So I don't know. Like he's to your point, Shane, he's the first white corner that I've looked at and been like first round pick.
Like, right. Rightfully so. Right, rightfully so. Hey, you know about Jason Sehorn, right? I feel like know about Jason Sehorn.
That's what I'm saying.
Little before your time, I think, mostly, but still, you probably know about Jason Sehorn. Real quick, Jake, do you have it 2 or 1? Because I know you have him at one of those 2.
I have him at 2.
Okay, thought so. Real quick with him. So first thing you gotta say, right?
Right. No.
In
case we haven't mentioned it,
he's like definitely really scrappy, I would say, right, Felix?
Oh, like right.
You know, he's
deceivingly athletic.
Yeah, he's way
real. Bring your lunch pail to work.
Exactly.
Kind of guy.
Like he will definitely be the first guy there and the last one out. We know this. Right? We know all that. Exactly. We know all this stuff. We got this. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving past
student of the game.
Student of the game.
Definitely volunteer off the field, you know.
Right, moving past all the obvious, of course, things, you know. You know right as you look at him, you know all those things. You don't even have to talk to him, right?
Yeah, that's actually our whole scouting report.
Actually, I didn't even have to watch him play. I watched one game and I'm like, oh, I see something. I really no. Anyway,
oh God.
No, but let's be real. He's, for me, the thing that's tough with him is I think he does have the ability to play on the outside. I think the athleticism is there. We saw at the pro day, put on a really good performance. And this is still like dealing with, like, the injuries cleared, but like he hasn't had a ton of time since then. Like, I think he's even a little bit more athletic than he probably tested as, on the field. I think the problem with him is not that whether he can play outside corner, it's whether he should play outside corner. Because to me, he would be far and away, like not even, and I haven't gone through all the safeties. That's for next week. I've saved that because I just haven't even cared enough of it, like given nearly enough of a shit to watch the safeties yet. Just going to be honest with you on that. Kind of already know where we're getting at with that. But he would be far and away safety one, would be nickel one for me personally, only because like I think the size profile and the athleticism is too good to pass up even for guys that are more experienced in the slot that we'll talk about next week. So it's like, what is his role going to actually be? Like, what should it be? I do think in like especially zone heavy systems, he'd be great on the outside because of his instincts, his playmaking ability, the ability to come downhill, be physical. I do think in man coverage, he's definitely good enough. And I think in press man, he's just inexperienced to a certain degree. But I do hope that like he gets a chance to prove that he can be an outside corner. Not only because it's a huge win for, I'm not going to say the word, Felix, but you know what I'm thinking. Huge win. Like, no. But
we got one.
Yeah, we got one. We're good. We're on the board. Someone call Rashard Mendenhall. We're on the board. Let's go. No, if you remember that whole thing, that was funny. But no, I want to see him play on the outside because I think he can do it. But also, again, like I just wonder if he'd be fucking awesome, like free safety or an awesome slot. I want to see him use kind of how Jalen Ramsey was used at the Rams, where he kind of just plays the best receiver on the team wherever he lines up at. Like follow that dude or play in the slot, make a play from that position, be a playmaker, use your instincts. Like all the intangibles with him is so good that like as an outside corner, I think sometimes you lose some of that impact where guys can just kind of say, you know what, forget that dude. We don't care he's out there because we're just not throwing at him. If you don't give them that opportunity by moving him around, it does make him more versatile and makes him more impactful. So regardless of where he's used, though, I have him ranked as the third outside corner, and then top, like if you want to see defensive back, I'd probably put him higher on that list if I'm using him in all of those facets. But he still is an outside guy to me. So, but anything you want to throw in the jig? I know you have him even higher than us, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I have him at 2. The main reason he's not 1 for me is really just because I think he's going to be a better safety than a corner.
Right.
And I think just
right.
I have
crush my dreams, Jake. Thanks. God damn it. You crushed it.
I have Quinyon Mitchell at 1. I just think as strictly cornerback, he's better than Cooper, but I mean, even though I think Cooper's a better safety, I still have him at 2 on the cornerback list.
Yeah,
so he does. Yeah, I just think he's better in the run game. He comes downhill very hard on the run. Mm-hmm. He's tenacious, and he's very comfortable with. Even if he gets beat or if his back is to the quarterback, I don't ever see him panic. Yeah. But I feel like his hips are a little stiff, and I don't think he gets in and out of transitions as fast. And because of that, I think he's better using zone coverage. So with all that in mind, he projects more as a safety for me, but he's still so good at cornerback that I have him at number 2. But yeah, I think you guys have covered him pretty well for the most part. Most of my opinions about him have already kind of been discussed.
Right. So again, like great player. I think, question here. How early is too early to draft a Gene? I think realistically, I mean, it depends on what his role is going to be. Because I think if he's if you're drafting me an outside corner, it's such a valuable position that like anywhere inside the top 15 to teams that are in range to take him, I think is fine. Like teams that would take him, obviously, because like it pretty much the Falcons are the first team where I think a defender comes off the board. So like if you want to say them, I'd probably not go corner for them personally, but I get it if they would. So technically that would start the range for defenders in general. And I think he's in that conversation as like one of the first 3 to 4 to 5 defenders to be taken. So like anywhere in that kind of range from there. So, but yeah, so let's talk about Quinyon Mitchell because he was number 2 for, I'm sure, Felix and I then too, right? And then Jake has him at 1, which again, totally understand that. The problem with Mitchell, and I'll start with the problem because the problem is so weird, is that when you watch his film, and I was able to get 3 games of him from this past year, Toledo is just like go to 13 yards backwards and wait for something to happen. His whole film is like, all right, play off coverage and literally go downhill and take the ball away from the other team every time that they try to throw at you. And he's like, all right. And then he did it. Like most of what he did in college is just not very translatable because no one's gonna fucking do that. No one's gonna have him do that. And I feel like it's just not realistic, right? To play off coverage all those snaps, just basically run at the ball every time it's thrown up. Like he was awesome. And like, do not get me wrong, it was really productive, very good for the Toledo defense, right? It just doesn't work that way in the NFL as much. Like he'll do that stuff, obviously. He'll play off man, he'll give cushion, he'll do stuff. But like he needs to be able to do more than that. And the thing about him is that that's why he's ranked as high as he is, because he went to the Senior Bowl and kicked everybody's ass. Like to the point where it's almost ridiculous, right? That's why we're at where we're at with him. Not only that, but obviously he tested out of this world. And you could tell like that's the only reason he was able to play the way he did at Toledo, because he could just run shit down before the ball even got there half the time, like even from like 10 yards away. So the athleticism translates, the movement skills translate, the physicality translates. It's just he's tough to project because like we just didn't see him play like NFL corner stuff in college. So like that's where I'm at with Felix. Like he's number 2 for me because his upside is through the roof. Like a physical profile like this just doesn't exist that often at corner. Like the size, speed, like all that. The length is whatever, but again, I don't think he's going to be playing a ton of press in his career. I don't think that's something he's going to do a ton of. So I'm not as worried about that, but yeah, it's tough a little bit. Like he's kind of a projection in a way, but also we just saw him for the entire pre-draft cycle just whoop ass at all the stuff that we weren't sure he was going to do good at. So it's like, what does that mean? Does it matter? Like, real quick, couple comments. Quentin cover 3. Yeah, Colts would be awesome. Awesome fit for him. Would be great. And it's like Gus Bradley would love him, all this stuff. Like I get that. Like he can do more of that stuff in a system like that he did in college and translates better. But still, like you're not playing off coverage as much. Like I was like, please give me a snap where he's within 5 yards of the receiver, please. Just clicking through just give me something, please. I want to, and it just didn't happen that much, right? So, but Jake, I know you have number 1, so I want to kind of give you the floor here too, though.
Okay. Yeah. Almost every play I watched, he's playing off.
It's just like, man, so like, I get it. It works.
I understand. Just because, we haven't really seen him play a lot of press coverage.
Yeah.
That makes, especially like at the top of the list, not knowing how well he's going to play press coverage is a pretty decent size concern. So I can understand that.
Right.
I think he's still going to be solid in press coverage, though, because just a couple of traits that I noticed. He has great like reactions, like just being able to react quickly, and he's good with his hands. He's aggressive and disruptive, and I think those things are going to lead to him being solid in man coverage. I do think, though, when he first gets in the NFL, he might struggle in press a little bit, just because he never played.
Hasn't really done it a lot, right? Like it's hard.
Yeah. That's something that's gonna have to, I think, develop more. But I mean, we know he can play well when he's off the ball. He reacts very well. He reads things very well, and he's smart. So I know that he can play off the ball. I just don't know if he can, play press coverage. But based off some of the traits I've seen, I think he'll develop into a pretty good.
The physical capabilities there.
Yeah, and his reaction speed. There's just a lot of things I see that I think will make him pretty good. He doesn't. At least when I watched, and this also might just be because he's playing farther off, but when I watched on film, it didn't look like he had the greatest speed, but
his 40 and explosive drills though were pretty good.
And I know they are. So that's also part of the reason why I think he'll develop into a good.
Yeah, I think he checks that box.
Press corner. It's just one of those things, where we haven't really seen it, but with the traits, I think he'll develop there. So that's why I have him at 1, but I definitely understand the concerns with that.
Yeah. Anything you want to throw out there, Felix?
Well, the main thing for me with Quinyon Mitchell, I think a lot of people are getting really hype on him, and they love the type of player he is, especially because he went and dominated the Senior Bowl and everything. I think the only reason why I have him at 2 and not at 1, and why I have him at 2 and not at 3, under Cooper DeJean is, one, I think he's a better corner prospect than Cooper DeJean, but I think I have him at 2 because there's enough questions in terms of the translation that makes me wonder how good of a player is he going to be once he gets to the pro level. And then the biggest thing for me is I like his game. I think he has the traits. I think the one thing about the Senior Bowl, and I've been to the Senior Bowl a few times, and I think one of the biggest things that kind of like sticks out to me is the guys who like end up doing pretty well, or at least the guys that are like very coachable players. Like they will sit there and work with the coaching staff that is there, and it's NFL coaching staffs, and they're going to sit there and they're going to learn and they're going to digest and they're going to replicate it onto the field.
Yeah.
So it makes me think that the translation of his talent to the pros is something that is very, very likely. So that's why I have him at 2. But I just think the fact that there's questions, whereas I feel like with Terrion Arnold, I just feel like I know what I'm getting. Even if it's not the same ceiling, I know what I'm getting. And I got to be like honest, like I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer or like criticize Quinyon Mitchell too much, but like I've seen Quinyon Mitchell get mocked to like 8 to the Falcons. Like that's crazy to me. That's so crazy. Yeah. Like top 10 when you have those kinds of questions. Yes,
it's rich a little bit. Yeah.
It's a bit rich. Whereas like Terrion Arnold at 8, I kind of get. Alabama prospect, had like very clean profile, high floor. I get it. But like Mitchell at like 15 makes total sense. I think that's great. And that's a competitive team too, so I could see him like being a great fit there and then being a good pick halfway through the first. But it's just those questions, and then the fact he played off so much, but I think he's a coachable player.
Yeah. I also think like he didn't play off because he has to. It's because Toledo was like, what if we just made this side of the field impossible? And they were like, all right, cool. And that's pretty – I mean, again, coaches are trying to win. So some of these guys, they don't always get to do the things. Like there's questions like with Jaden Daniels about the ability to throw in the middle of the field. And it's like, yes, I think some of that is real, but also like, did you need to throw in the middle of the field? Like, did you have to do that? Like when you could just throw a slot fade 80 fucking times a game if you wanted to. Like, yeah, I probably wouldn't throw in the middle of the field either. It's scary. You might get intercepted over there. There's people all over the place.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Blake Neighbors is 10 yards, has 10 yards of separation, 50 yards down the field. It's like, oh, I'll just throw it to him. Like, obviously, not saying it's a non-issue, but like there's situations like that where there's context needed, right? So with Mitchell, like you mentioned, like we talked about the Colts because the comment mentioned like perfect fit, I think, for what they do. Like he wouldn't have to change his game as much as maybe other systems and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't think he'll make it to 22 with the Eagles, but man, like I could picture it, Felix. Let me set this up for you, Felix. All right.
Let me set
this up. Let me set it up. All right. So they're playing, I don't know, the Giants. We'll say the Giants, right? And Daniel Jones is dropping back, and Quinyon Mitchell's got his eyes on him, and he's like, I know he's throwing over here. And he just jumps that shit, takes to the house. I could see it. It's really easy in my mind.
A la Devin Witherspoon.
Right, exactly. Eagles would love it. It would be great. I could see that. I don't think he'll make it.
I just want it to be like, let it be Michael Penix instead. Just let it be a different person.
Yeah, right. That's fine. Yeah, I know. Yeah, same situation.
Like, oh my God.
But no, no, I think that'll do it for us this week. We'll be back next week.
Real quick.
Yes.
Real quick. Because I wanted to bring it up, and I did not bring it up earlier, but I really want to get y'all's thoughts.
Okay.
My comp for Cooper DeJean.
Okay. Oh my God, I can't wait.
So it's so random. No, but honestly, my comp for Cooper DeJean is Antrel Roll.
Okay.
Because I see
that makes a lot of sense.
Roll came out as a corner,
played a lot of safety,
went number 8 overall, moved to safety, played nickel, and was an impact player.
He was a really good player for a long time. I mean, there is one thing I would say.
I already know what it's.
No, I think Cooper's just a little better of an athlete. I would say maybe a little bit. Gotcha. I know what you were thinking, Felix. I got you on that one.
Damn
it! No, I don't know. No, I think that's a good comp actually, because the safety corner like flexibility. I think, and I just want Cooper to go. Like I kind of want him to go to the Packers just because it's really funny, and people love doing it. They wanted it to happen the whole draft cycle, and like I think Packers fans like are so tired of it that it would just make me laugh if it happened. I'd be like, the universe is right. We're good.
Right. Yeah, put him in Wisconsin.
Right, there we go. Yeah, he'll be. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens with that. But that'll do it for us this week. We'll be back next week with probably not a 2-hour show, but it's been fun to talk about.
Yeah.
We will do our top 5 safeties and top 5 nickel defenders specifically. Probably a little bit less time on the nickels because some of them will be guys we talked about already in the show. But then we'll probably do as well our final like major mock draft that we'll do at least like on a show. I do want to set up a final actual mock before the draft starts, guys. We'll talk about that after the show. And then again, assuming we can get enough people, because I will not be talking to mostly myself at any point during the show if it happens. But if we can get enough people to be on for at least day 1 of the draft, we will try to do a live stream of day 1, talk about the picks as they come in. If not, we couldn't get enough people, but we'll try to do some post-draft content as well. And then we'll sort out how we want to kind of tackle the show moving forward from there, but definitely come back next week and the week after. We should have stuff for you here. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Later.